Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight. Former Special Counsel Robert Hur testified today before the House Judiciary Committee. Democrats on the panel accused the attorney of political bias, while Republicans highlighted possible crimes committed by President Biden. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on the story.
Robert Hur's testimony today at the House Judiciary Committee is his first time speaking publicly on his report on President Biden's handling of classified materials. Let's remember that Robert Hur's report on President Biden's handling of classified materials resulted in no charges against the president. During his opening remarks, Chairman Jim Jordan summarized his reasoning for the need for Tuesday's hearing.
Joe Biden broke the law. But because he's a forgetful old man who would appear sympathetic to a jury, Mr. Hur chose not to bring charges.
It is important to note that Robert Hur appeared before the House Judiciary Committee today as a private citizen, as he no longer works for the Justice Department. Congressman Gerald Nadler, the ranking Democratic member of the House Judiciary Committee, dismissed Robert Hur's testimony before it even began.
This was a Republican hit job. Remember, Bob Hur is the same individual who wrote for Bob Barr the false summary of the Mueller report.
Democrats in the committee repeatedly made statements alluding to former President Trump.
This, my friends, this is a memory test. But it's not a memory test for President Biden. It's a memory test for all of America. Do we remember fascism? That's what all of this is about. It's about trying to pull the wool over the eyes of America.
Robert Hur's special report on President Biden's handling of classified materials drew attention for its comments on the president's mental acuity. But the report also highlights that the president willfully retained classified materials.
My team and I conducted a thorough, independent investigation. We identified evidence that the president willfully retained classified materials after the end of his vice presidency when he was a private citizen.
After 5 hours of testimony, Robert Hur concluded by saying that his remarks on the president's mental acuity were necessary, accurate, and fair, and that he did not exonerate the president with his report. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
Be sure to stick around for more analysis on Hur's testimony coming up later in the show. And from one president's classified documents case to another, a man known as Trump Employee 5 in Special Counsel Jack Smith indictment spoke publicly on Monday. Former Mar-a-Lago valet and Smith's star witness Brian Butler told CNN he helped to move boxes without knowing they contained classified documents. NTD's legal correspondent Arlene Richards has more on what Butler said.
A central witness in Special Counsel Jack Smith's classified documents case spoke publicly on Monday. Former Trump employee Brian Butler told CNN about his involvement in helping to move boxes of classified documents. He says he didn't know what was in the boxes.
No clue. No, I had no clue. I mean, we were just taking them out of the Escalade, piling them up. I remember they were all stacked on top of each other, and then we're lifting them up to the pilots.
He said the boxes were headed for New Jersey, where former President Trump and his family lived. Until now, Butler has been known only as Trump Employee 5 in the superseding indictment filed by Smith last July. He told CNN host Caitlin Collins why he chose to speak out now.
It's been almost a year since FBI agents showed up at my house when my wife was at home. And, you know, over the course of the last year, emotionally, it's been a roller coaster. You know, a couple weeks ago, Judge Cannon says she's going to release the names of the witnesses. You know, you go from highs and lows in this. And instead of just waiting for it to just come out, I think it's better that I get to at least say what happened.
Judge Eileen Cannon ordered Smith to release the names of witnesses against Trump, but she held off on releasing the names after Smith asked her to reconsider. In a filing, Smith threatened to appeal to the 11th Circuit if Cannon doesn't overturn her ruling. Butler, who was employed at Mar-a-Lago for 20 years, said he talked to Smith's investigators as many as 5 times. He talked to CNN about indictment issues such as allegations that surveillance footage was deleted and whether Mar-a-Lago was secure enough to store classified documents.
Look, I think it's secure, but there were definitely a lot of gaps where people could get in very easily.
Who made the call where these boxes were kept? You know, the Pine Hall in the ballroom.
Well, Pine Hall was always guarded. You didn't have to worry about any security breaches for Pine Hall.
He said another room was easier to get to, and anybody who had the master key could access it. Collins asked Butler if he thought Trump was a national security risk. Butler answered that he didn't think Trump should be a presidential candidate at this time, and that Trump's claims that his case is a witch hunt is, quote, bogus. Meanwhile, on Thursday, Cannon will hear arguments on motions filed by Trump and the co-defendants to dismiss the indictment. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
An American citizen reportedly killed at the hands of Hamas terrorists. Israeli officials today confirming the death of dual U.S.-Israeli citizen Itay Chen. According to intelligence materials, the 19-year-old was killed on October 7th, and his body is still being held in Gaza. The U.S. State Department today extended condolences to his family.
Secretary Blinken has met with his family on a number of occasions. He's heard their story. He knows how much they were hoping to bring him home.
Chen served as an IDF soldier on the Gaza border. Until now, he was listed as one of 6 American hostages held in the region. In a statement, his parents thanked the White House and the U.S. Congress for their support and prayers. The family is leading a campaign calling for the release of American hostages held by Hamas. More than 1,200 people in Israel were killed during Hamas's October 7th terrorist attacks, with over 250 kidnapped and held hostage in Gaza. And we have more updates on the Israel-Hamas war. A ship carrying humanitarian aid is setting sail for Gaza and should arrive in days. The ship is carrying some 200 tons of food from U.S.-based charity World Central Kitchen. It left a port in Cyprus this morning and is the first aid ship heading for Gaza. The aid ship underwent weeks of preparation and inspection by Israel. It marks the opening of a new maritime corridor to deliver humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. The U.S. and other countries in the Middle East are continuing to deliver aid to Gaza through other means, including airdrops and aid trucks. This comes as hostage and ceasefire negotiations have stalled. A spokesperson for Qatar's foreign ministry said a deal is not near. Amidst increasing turmoil and unrest in Haiti, the country's prime minister now says he will resign once a transitional presidential council has been established. His announcement comes as the country could be on the brink of a civil war, with many calls for him to step down. NTD's Jason Perry has the update.
The Caribbean nation of Haiti has seen increased violence recently, with many people dissatisfied with the Haitian Prime Minister, Ariel Henry. Many people are upset because Prime Minister Henry was not elected by the people of Haiti. He was appointed to his position shortly after Haiti's former president was assassinated in July 2021. And his position as prime minister was supposed to be temporary. But Henry has repeatedly postponed the country's elections, saying they needed to restore security first. Henry traveled to Kenya in February, where he advocated for a United Nations-backed police force for Haiti. But armed gangs prevented his return to Haiti. He's since been stranded in Puerto Rico. And since he has been away from the country, gang violence has increased, including attacks on Haiti's main prison that helped thousands of inmates escape. And on Monday, Caribbean leaders met in Jamaica to discuss the dire situation in Haiti. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was also in attendance.
We support the plan to create a broad-based, inclusive, independent presidential college.
He added that this independent presidential college would oversee Haitian affairs and would also hold free and fair elections for the Haitian people. Soon after the meeting, Henry said he will step down after a transitional presidential council is established. And he gave this message on Tuesday.
I'm asking all Haitians to remain calm and do everything they can for peace and stability to come back as fast as possible for the good of the country.
In the meantime, armed gangs appear to be controlling parts of the country. This gang leader, nicknamed Barbecue, was seen firing random shots in the air as he walked down the street.
Today, we are taking the occasion to tell the international community to give Haiti a chance. Because what is happening in Haiti now, we Haitians have to decide who is going to lead the country and what model of government we want.
Haitian residents shared their thoughts.
We must take our destiny into our own hands. All Haitians need to work together to see if we can save the country. The only thing I can say is that Ariel Henry is out forever. He cannot do anything for us anymore.
Blinken also announced that the U.S. Defense Department has pledged $300 million to support a multinational security force in Haiti. And he said the U.S. will also provide $33 million in additional humanitarian assistance for the people of Haiti to further support their health and food security. Jason Perry, NTD News.
And we'll be taking a closer look at what's behind the unrest in Haiti in the second half of the show. Switching gears to the Russia-Ukraine war, the Pentagon has announced a $300 million aid package to Ukraine. The funds were reportedly cobbled from some unexpected cost savings from defense contracts. But the White House today saying it's far from meeting Ukraine's battlefield needs.
It goes without saying, this package does not displace and should not delay the critical need to pass the bipartisan national security bill.
This package marks the Pentagon's first drawdown since December, when it said the U.S. was out of replenishment funds. Officials recently announced the U.S. weapons stockpile has been overdrawn by a staggering $10 billion. This new package includes air defense interceptors, artillery rounds, and armor systems. As of now, the White House is pressuring Congress to pass a larger aid proposal, which has been stuck in limbo as House Republicans refuse to take it to the floor. In just a few hours, President Biden and former President Trump could officially clinch their party's nominations. 4 states are voting as both candidates seek to appeal to swing state voters. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has more.
Today, voters in Georgia, Hawaii, Mississippi, and Washington are casting their ballots in a Super Tuesday round 2. And as neither Trump nor Biden is facing any real challengers anymore, tonight's results could give both of them the delegates needed to clinch their party's official nominations. And a big state to watch for tonight will be Georgia. While Trump and Biden are not competing directly against each other, tonight's results there could give us a glimpse into voter enthusiasm in that key battleground state in November. Both Trump and Biden held dueling rallies in Georgia this past weekend, targeting each other directly. Watch.
But we all know Donald Trump sees a different America. An American story of resentment, revenge, and retribution. That's not me, that's not you.
Rather than trying to bring our country together, he tried to cling to power by tearing our country apart.
President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris are planning to campaign in all battleground states, including President Biden right here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin tomorrow. Meanwhile, Biden today in D.C. met with the Teamsters, which has significant membership in key swing states like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. But a recent poll by Bloomberg shows that President Biden is trailing behind former President Trump in almost all key battleground states. Reporting in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Iris Tao, NTD News.
The House Republicans' razor-thin majority just got thinner. Congressman Ken Buck today announcing he will step down from Congress at the end of next week. In a statement on X, the Colorado lawmaker said he's looking to stay involved in the political process and spend more time with his family. Buck has sparred with many other House Republicans over issues ranging from the 2020 presidential election to the impeachment of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. He's also a staunch critic of former President Trump. Buck announced last year that he would not run for re-election, citing concerns surrounding his party's stance on the 2020 election and the January 6th Capitol breach. And in the upcoming Colorado congressional primaries, GOP Congresswoman Lauren Boebert is switching districts to replace Buck. That election will take place in July. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Former Special Counsel Robert Hur testified today before the House Judiciary Committee. Joining us now to discuss his testimony is investigative journalist Jeff Carlson. He's also a co-host of Truth Over News on Epic TV. Jeff Carlson, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Given Special Counsel Robert Hur's testimony before Congress today, what are the broader implications for President Biden, especially given that he is seeking re-election?
Well, there was nothing good for Biden that came out of today. Certainly, I think in terms of him seeking re-election, everything that he claimed, that he didn't have classified information, that he only had a handful of old documents, all of those statements were disproven by her. Her found that he had documents located at, I believe it was 7 different locations. He had them in his den. He had them in his office. He had them in his upstairs den. He had them in his garage. The list went on. But of equal importance, and something that I don't know is getting quite enough attention, is the duration and time and where he had a lot of these documents. Her found that he had documents spanning decades, going well back into his time as a senator, which means that those documents almost certainly had to come out of a SCIF, either carried out by Biden himself or carried out by someone else. And then, as Biden would move locations throughout his time, those documents were then moved. So it looks bad.
Now, expanding on that, both Biden and Trump have classified documents cases with different results. Trump is set to appear in court in Florida for his case. Some are calling this a two-tier justice system. What is the evidence for that?
It absolutely is. First, it's worth remembering that what Trump is being charged for is documents that he took after being a president, when he had legal access to these documents. So that's a fundamental difference, because Biden was either a senator or he was vice president. Neither office gave him the stature to hold these documents. So that's a basic difference right there. But also it's the way in which these documents were kept, where they were kept, and the duration that they were kept, and how the documents were used. Now, don't forget that Biden was writing a book for which he received an $8 million fee. And as part of that book, he gave a number of classified documents to his ghostwriter, who then had those documents. And then when the investigation into Biden began, his ghostwriter actually destroyed some of the evidence that was involved within the investigation. So it's a completely different sequence of events in my mind. So much worse for Biden. And it does very much demonstrate a two-tier system of justice, which people are so frustrated over. The reality is, in D.C., in a normal environment, nobody's getting charged for having classified documents. It just rarely ever happens. So to have it happen to President Trump in his situation compared to the situation of Biden makes everything that much more glaring.
Now, expanding on the ghostwriter part, I do want to play some sound about that.
What did that ghostwriter do with the information Joe Biden shared with him on his laptop? What did he do after you were named special counsel?
He slid, if I remember correctly, he slid those files into his recycle bin on his computer.
Tried to destroy the evidence, didn't he?
Correct.
How damning is this in terms of willful retention, and how likely are we to see this play out into President Biden's impeachment probe?
Well, again, I think this really highlights the nature of what Joe Biden was doing. He's giving classified information to his ghostwriter, a person who holds no classification standing and never did. As far as into his impeachment query, I guess I wonder how much that really will play into things. Part of that answer relies on my faith in how aggressive the GOP will actually be in all of this. So, I think it more is it's a larger picture that's being painted about the way Biden just cavalierly treated classified information throughout the entirety of his career.
Now, legal analyst Jonathan Turley wrote on Twitter, or X, that Hur just contradicted the claims of Democratic members that Biden and the White House did not try to change his report or remove material, adding he confirmed that the White House made multiple such objections to Attorney General Garland and did send such a letter seeking changes. What do you make of that?
Yeah, what they were trying to do was remove the political damage from Hur's report, specifically where Hur was talking about Biden's memory issues. And I've seen a lot of pushback this morning from Democrats trying to claim that those were taken out of context. But the problem is you have to read the entire transcript. You can always find parts where it doesn't look too bad. And in reality, at multiple points, Biden's memory looks terrible. And, this presents Democrats with a double-edged sword, because they can't really have it both ways. Either Biden is has real memory problems and isn't competent to face these charges, in which case, what does that say about him being president? Conversely, if Biden is competent enough and his memory is fine, then shouldn't he be facing charges at some point for these? Now, the reality of it is Biden's not going to face charges while he's president. But again, Democrats are trying to have things both ways in their analysis of this.
Jeff Carlson, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
The House is set to vote tomorrow on a bill that will determine the future of TikTok. Members of Congress say it's about protecting national security. NTD's Jack Bradley has more.
Members of Congress were just briefed about a bill that they'll be considering tomorrow that would essentially push the Chinese Communist Party's influence out of TikTok. It would force TikTok to divest from China-owned company ByteDance. Now, while members of Congress were still on the fence about the bill, they did raise concerns about the Chinese Communist Party accessing this user data that TikTok has and changing the content that Americans can see. Take a look.
In this case, you've got a privately held company that is heavily owned by the Chinese Communist Party, so that's a problem.
Certainly the idea that Communist China can have access to data is a threat.
What to do here is be very thoughtful and deliberate on balancing the need to force the divestiture from TikTok without granting any authority to the executive branch to regulate content or go after any American company.
The overwhelming issue here is, do we protect our national security?
Who controls the algorithm, controls all of it. Hong Kong and Uyghurs, but the Tibetans have their information not only suppressed on TikTok, but also misinformation on TikTok.
A TikTok report released by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence yesterday found that the Chinese regime used TikTok to influence the 2022 midterm elections from both parties, and that they may do the same in 2024. Since the bill came out, TikTok has been lobbying its 170 million users in the U.S. to contact their representatives and push back against the bill. Lawmakers of the House Select Committee said TikTok is spreading false claims by saying it's a total ban rather than getting rid of the Chinese regime's influence. The bill needs a 2/3 majority vote to pass as it's being considered on an expedited process. Jack Bradley, NTD News.
A Boeing whistleblower has died in what South Carolina officials are calling a suicide. The Charleston County Coroner's Office said the man died from what appears to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. 62-year-old John Barnett had been involved in a lawsuit against plane maker Boeing. He was found dead in a vehicle on Saturday, the same day he was scheduled to appear in court. Barnett worked for 30 years at Boeing as a quality control engineer before retiring in 2017. He recently became a vocal critic of the company's safety and production quality practices. At the time of his death, he was a key witness in a whistleblower lawsuit against Boeing. Barnett claimed the company retaliated against him for repeatedly reporting defects. In a recent live-streamed interview, Barnett raised concerns about Boeing's quality control issues, specifically within the 737 and 787 aircraft programs. Boeing expressed its condolences but did not comment on the allegations made by Barnett. Joining us now to help break down the crisis in Haiti is Bart Marcois. He's a former official for international affairs at the Energy Department and a former U.S. diplomat. Bart Marcois, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
Thanks, Tiffany.
Now, Haiti's Prime Minister Ariel Henry has resigned. Now, he is still stranded in Puerto Rico amid gang violence across his country. What is the significance of this, especially in terms of how it will impact the U.S.?
Well, let's go back a little bit. Henry was not supposed to, he's not really the legitimate prime minister. He stepped in as an interim prime minister, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago, 2 years ago, maybe. And he was supposed to hold elections, and he was supposed to be a caretaker. And he decided it was good to be the prime minister, and he didn't want to resign. And he was out of the country. He'd gone to Kenya looking for troops to bring in to control the gang violence in Haiti. And while he was gone, the gang said, he's out of the country, we're taking over. And they said, we're in charge, he's not coming back. And it's not that they want elections, They just think he's illegitimate, we're illegitimate, we may as well take what we can get. And so that's the sort of the scene setter for, if you will, for what's going on there. And the significance for America is, of course, any kind of instability, especially in a country so close to our own shores, generates enormous waves of refugees. And they will try to come into the United States rather than just cross the border into the Dominican Republic, which is a very stable country. They want to use the excuse of violence and instability to say, well, the only place I really feel safe is in Miami.
Wow. Now, many reports are saying that collapse is imminent in Haiti, but how did we get to this point? What actions, either from Haiti or even the U.S. government, helped lead to this?
The U.S. government bears a great deal of responsibility for this. The Biden administration is the proximate cause of it, in so much as you can blame something on external forces, because they essentially installed Henri as the prime minister. They made a deal with him that he would accept Haitian refugees who had made it to the U.S.-Mexican border and were coming across the country and setting up makeshift tent cities just across the border. He said, yeah, I'll take them back if you let me be prime minister. And so the Biden administration said, sure, take them back, and we won't press you on anything. We won't press you to hold elections. But the real responsibility for large-scale instability goes back to Bill and Hillary Clinton. In 2009, when Hillary Clinton became the Secretary of State, she announced that Haiti was going to be a special focus of her tenure as Sec State. She had a special place in her heart for Haiti. She and her husband had honeymooned there. They spent time there while they were on a honeymoon. They spent time in Haiti, and they just loved Haiti. Well, what they had was a position with the Clinton Foundation that had adopted Haiti as a project. And a year later, when the earthquake hit, they took Haiti as their cause and went around the world raising $1 billion for Haitian relief. And the Haitians hardly saw a dime of that money. It was a very sad chapter in history.
Reports do note that that was a disaster, and one of the projects there only got about 10% of what it had promised. Given the news coming out of Haiti, what is next for the country? Where do you see all of this going?
Oh, it's just nasty. Somebody will have to come in with a massive military force, put down the gangs, set up a temporary administration, impose enough peace to hold elections, and then, cross their fingers and pray that this time they will hold. We need to get the influence of big moneyed people out of Haiti. It's a desperately poor country, and billionaires are going in there and making more money off the backs of these desperately poor people. It's the shame of the entire Western Hemisphere.
Going back to the earlier point about immigration, what are we likely to see in terms of immigration? Is the U.S. about to see an influx of Haitians seeking relief?
Absolutely. Already, we found out last week that the Biden administration has a program whereby people can download an app and be flown free of charge into the United States directly from the airport in their home country, and get access to a lot of different government subsidies. Haiti was one of those countries. My guess is that particular program will stop, but I think you're going to see huge floods of Haitians coming overseas from landing on the shores of Florida and overland through Mexico. And we should not accept them because there are many, many places that they can go for asylum. They don't need to come all the way to the United States. In order to get here, they have to pass through several other very stable countries, and that's where they should be offered asylum.
Bart Marcois, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Tiffany. It's always a pleasure.
Chinese nationals entering the country illegally. They make up the fastest growing group of illegal immigrants in California. Why are they fleeing, and are there any dangers to the U.S.? NTD's Ariane Pastar brings us a closer look from San Diego, California.
Border Patrol drops off dozens of Chinese nationals every single day right here at this transit center in San Diego, California. Now, these smugglers train Chinese nationals not to talk to media, but we wanted to find out why they're coming to America, and we managed to get a few answers.
I feel that in China, there is no freedom of speech, no human rights, no emphasis on universal values, and no freedom of religion. It is an atheistic region, which contradicts my values because I myself am a Christian. The current situation in China, under the leadership of the country's leaders, is deteriorating rapidly. You know, it's really in dire straits, and the ordinary people are all complaining. You know, this is the scene I see in China. In my opinion, the fundamental reason for this is the lack of faith.
Not all of them criticize the Chinese regime, but they admit that it's better to live in the U.S. than in China.
Because China's economy has not been doing so well in the past 2 years. It's not as good as we had hoped. It's definitely not comparable to the United States, to be honest.
Some of the Chinese men coming to America might not be coming for a better life. That's what Lieutenant Colonel Pete Chambers told me. He's a former Green Beret who was also stationed at the border.
The most dangerous thing would be the cells that are coming in. Okay, so the cell, what I mean by that is groups of men that come in that are networked to each other that could then do something nefarious later on when they're told to do something nefarious later on. That would be a cell.
Now, Chambers told me one of the most important things is to conduct thorough background checks of all individuals coming to the United States. Reporting from San Diego, California, Ariane Pastar, NTD News.
Thinking of traveling to China for an organ transplant or happen to know someone who is? Here's a word of caution from human rights lawyer and Nobel Peace Prize nominee David Matas. Someone in China might be killed for your organs. Let's take a closer look at why.
A new push to expose chilling crimes happening inside China by student organizations at Harvard. During panels hosted at the Ivy League last week, experts laid out evidence for forced organ harvesting in China. That is, harvesting organs from victims while they're still alive.
It's a crime against humanity, it's genocide.
For years, organ availability in China seemed too good to be true.
If you pay less, it could be a month, 2 months. If you pay more, it could be a couple weeks.
In Western countries, including the U.S., wait times are much longer. For a heart, the wait is 6 to 12 months. Others may wait several years. It's common for patients on the transplant list to die waiting. But in China, transplants of vital organs like livers can be booked weeks or even months in advance.
You can't make a fixed appointment for a heart transplant without somebody being booked to be killed for their organs.
In 2019, an international tribunal in London gave its final judgment on allegations of forced organ harvesting. The tribunal is chaired by Sir Geoffrey Nice, the lead prosecutor on the case against the former president of Yugoslavia. The tribunal said Falun Gong practitioners were probably the main source of China's organ supply. Falun Gong is a mind-body spiritual meditation practice that has faced brutal persecution in China for over 2 decades. A witness at the panel said she believes her father was a victim of forced organ harvesting. He was arrested in 2004 and died 3 months later in police custody. When she finally was allowed to see his body,
I saw stitches at his throat, sewn up by very thick black threads. Knife incisions extended down from his throat until they were covered by his clothes. My aunt and uncle went in later and they unbuttoned his clothes while police weren't paying attention. They saw the incision went all the way from the throat to the abdomen. When they pressed on the abdomen, they found it was stuffed with hard ice.
The panel was hosted by 3 student organizations at Harvard. Organizer An Cao said there isn't enough awareness about the issue in the school's academic circles.
And I think when I talk to people at Harvard, including faculties and students, a lot of them still think it's not real. Some of them even think this is just an urban legend, or it's just a propaganda against the CCP. So that's why I invite the speakers, I organize the events to systematically present the evidence to the communities at Harvard.
3 U.S. states, Texas, Utah, and Arizona, passed bills combating forced organ harvesting. David Mattis says more needs to be done.
Human rights violations, if they're not stopped, they spread. I mean, Americans can't wait until somebody comes for them for their organs, because by then it'll be too late. If they want to stop that from happening to them, they have to stop it while it's stoppable.
Right now, it's unclear how many Americans go to China for organ transplants every year. Juliet Song, NTD News.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. American manufacturers say they need help with taxes if the nation wants to continue as a world leader. A group of executives today brought some suggestions to the Senate Finance Committee. NTD's Virginia Gibson has more.
American manufacturers say they need tax incentives or else they may lose to China. Executives from various industries had this message for lawmakers on Tuesday.
Our U.S. R&D tax incentives have lagged behind those of other countries.
Semiconductor executive Shannon Janus said countries globally are incentivizing research and development. She believes the U.S. needs more tax incentives to remain a global leader.
China, along with other nations, provide a 200% deduction for R&D expenses. So this means that Chinese companies can deduct 200 for every 100 spent on innovation. Yeah. U.S. companies face capitalization rules that hinder immediate expensing for R&D.
Manufacturers also want tax help with growing the American supply chain. Otherwise, the country is dependent on China.
American companies have little hope of competing against lower-cost Chinese labor, Chinese coal-based manufacturing, and Chinese pricing.
Chemical industry executive Peter Huntsman said his own product couldn't compete with China's products. Their prices were far below his in cost of production.
When the Chinese undercut prices like this is usually just on a temporary basis. Sure. This discouraged hundreds of millions of dollars of future investment, not just by Huntsman, but other producers as well.
Executives said they had a positive experience with Trump's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act passed in 2017. It lowered the corporate tax rate to a flat 21%.
They were rocket fuel for us. We were able to invest in over $1 million in capital equipment, create jobs, give our team members quarterly bonuses, raises.
Machine manufacturer Courtney Silver said Trump's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act benefited the entire supply chain. It let her lower her prices, benefiting her consumers. Her consumers then could lower their own prices.
It gave us confidence, and not only confidence, but it gave us cash flow. It gave us liquidity, which was especially proved to be critical going into the unexpected years of the pandemic.
Other executives said it let them increase research and development, bring billions of dollars back home, and expand production. Virginia Gibson, NTD News.
The president of the NAACP has asked Black students to reconsider attending Florida universities in response to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis prohibiting the use of state funds for DEI programs. DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. DeSantis says the concept has been used instead to impose an ideological agenda.
The NAACP's letter to NCAA President Charlie Baker, as well as Black students everywhere, asked students to reconsider attending public colleges and universities, saying, "This is not about politics." The letter came just days after the University of Florida announced they were closing their DEI office and eliminating 13 full-time positions, while stopping any outside contracts with DEI vendors. That was in response to Governor Ron DeSantis outlawing the use of public funding for DEI programs across the state last May. University of Florida alum and NFL Hall of Famer Emmitt Smith said he was disgusted by the move, while calling on minority athletes to be aware and vocal about the decision. DEI stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, although DeSantis says he disagrees with the way it's been implemented, saying DEI is better viewed as standing for discrimination, exclusion, and indoctrination. The two-term governor said DEI has not been used to promote intellectual diversity on campus, to debate different viewpoints, or to have robust discussions. According to Christopher Rufo, who's a trustee at New College in Sarasota, Florida, the University of Florida had launched more than 1,000 DEI initiatives, some of which denounced the United States as a system of white supremacy. Florida is not alone in their ban, with states like Oklahoma and Texas also phasing out DEI programs as well. Reporting by Dave Martin, NTD News.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.